Today we're going to be talking about the 5 best Five-Why examples. And I've brought in the expert, Mark Paradise, here to help me go through these Five-Why examples. Now, you helped find a lot of these examples. Where did most of these come from?
Well, they got a long history. The first one that we're going to do actually comes from the creator of Five-Whys, and it was his example of how you ought to do Five-Whys. And other ones just came off of different people who had them on the internet and had used Five-Whys for, well, you'll see the kind of problems that we have.
So for those who don't know what Five-Whys is, it's...
Come on, does anybody not know what Five-Whys is?
If they found this, maybe they don't. It's a process for...
you ask why 5 times.
Very simple. My kid does it way too much. So the process of asking 5 whys to find root cause and go through it. So
it's the 5-year-old, why?
Well,
why?
It's from the 1930s. It got popular probably in the 70s in manufacturing because of Toyota. So let's go into it. This first one from Taiichi Ohno. And his example is, why did the robot stop? And
so we're going to show this on the screen, right?
Yep,
right here on the screen.
We'll show it up here. So I'll ask that. You drop the why. Here we go. Why did the robot stop?
Well, the circuit was overloaded. It caused a fuse to blow.
Well, why is the circuit overloaded?
Oh, well, there was insufficient lubrication on the bearings, so they locked up.
Now, why was there insufficient lubrication on the bearings?
Well, let's see. The oil pump on the robot was not circulating sufficient oil.
Why was the pump not circulating sufficient oil?
Well, the intake was clogged with metal shavings.
Why was the intake clogged with metal shavings?
Well, because there was no filter to keep the metal shavings out.
Aha! So we have
That was the 5th why?
That was the 5th why.
Oh, we know now.
So we now know that there's no filter on the pump, and that was the root cause.
That's what Taiichi Ohno said.
So what makes a good 5-why example, and is this a good example?
First off, by definition, this is a good example because it was the one he used to teach 5 whys.
Okay.
So if the guy who created 5 whys says this is a good example, who am I to argue with it?
So when we look at these examples, we want to look and say, did they get to root cause? Is there something missing, and is there something more? So what do we think about? What do you think about this example?
Well, I think this is a good example of where 5 whys fall short, because first off, I don't think there's no filter on the pump is a root cause. And the second thing I naturally think of is, well, where'd those metal file? I mean, how can you get enough metal file shavings to clog a pump? That's a lot of shavings. Where did they come from? And also I thought, well, if there's insufficient oil flow, shouldn't there have been an alarm for that? And none of those kinds of things were talked about. So it's like there's a lot of missing information here. There's a lot more they should have been asking about than just, oh, we need a filter on the pump.
Now people have said that 5 whys, in this example in particular, is about solving the simple things that you can recognize to solve. So in this case, Taiichi he knows a pump, and he'll just do a simple fix by adding a filter. And that fixes the problem.
Well, no, it doesn't, because where'd all those filings come from?
Oh, that's not our problem. We have a filter for it. So
I know, but you don't want filings in your lube oil system. Is the lube oil system? Yeah, lube oil system. There's filings come from someplace. That is a problem you need to fix, and they didn't fix that.
So this first example, maybe it's not the best.
Well,
so
I can't argue with Taiichi Ohno. I just can argue with, I don't think this technique explores all the problems that need to be solved.
All right,
and it didn't guide anybody to do that. This was Taiichi Ohno's thought process, is I guess what I'd say.
So it matched his thinking.
He thought about it. You're right. When you said he said this is the fix, that's his thinking. And it didn't go beyond it.
So maybe Taiichi didn't figure out the best one. Let's look at
it. I hate to critique Taiichi, so maybe I just don't know.
Maybe we don't know.
But filings are supposed to be in there.
But I've got a better example.
Okay.
I've got this one's a medical example.
Oh, well, that's good.
And this was a patient had the wrong leg amputated.
Okay.
So big problem.
I'm gonna do the second part. You're gonna do the first part.
Same way. So what was why was the leg amputated?
So they amputated the wrong leg, and the first question was, why was the wrong leg amputated?
Yep,
And the answer is the doctor couldn't see the marking and thought it was the wrong leg that was marked. So he thought, yeah, that's the leg right there.
So why couldn't the doctor detect it?
Why? Well, the patient gave consent the night before the surgery to a registrar who does not perform the surgery and was not familiar with the patient, and the registrar marked the leg with a washable marking in the wrong place.
So why did they mark it with a washable marking in the wrong place?
Well, they didn't know about using a waterproof marking tool, and they were unaware of how the marking was supposed to be completed.
Why were they unaware?
Well, they were new. The department didn't have a formal induction process. Induction means training, for new registrars.
Why didn't they have a new process?
Well, nobody ever said they should have an induction process.
Oh, so the answer is have an training. We'll just do training.
Well, that's the corrective action, but the root cause is no one ever said they should have an induction process.
No one ever said something.
No one ever said something.
Is that a root cause? No one ever said?
No one ever said. See, if they would have said, we would have done it, but nobody said.
Okay, so when we look at this one, are there problems in this 5Y where it goes from an amputated leg to no one ever said,
well,
we should have trained somebody?
See, this is one of those you go, holy cow, the only safeguard was a new registrar making a mark on a leg. That's the only way they got the right one. Boy, that doesn't seem like a very good safeguard, does it?
Seems pretty weak to me.
There ought to be some multiple redundant things so they don't cut off the wrong leg.
Yeah.
You don't wake up in the morning and go, where'd that leg go? That would be bad.
The guy using the wrong pen.
The wrong pen.
the
washable marking pen.
There's something. If that's the difference between your leg getting cut off.
I
or
don't
not,
want to go to that
pen.
hospital.
It's a little bit worrying.
So the fix would be, okay, we'll train him to use the right pen. And then another new guy comes in, and oops, we forgot to train him. Another leg comes off. That doesn't seem like a very good process, does it?
So we're seeing in this one that there's a limitation in what it's focusing on a little bit. It's focusing just on this problem of marking a leg with a pin and training a person to mark a leg with a pin.
Well, and so, my view of this is they ought to be going back and looking at what their process was. And one step in the process was maybe the registrar marking the leg. But maybe they should have had several different steps in there where they verified this is the right leg, this is the one he authorized taking off, this is the one the surgeon says is the right one for that patient. And we look at his records and say, yes, yea, verily, it was the right leg or left leg, I don't remember. And we got the right one. So there's multiple safeguards in there so they don't cut off the wrong leg.
Yeah. So we're seeing a limitation also with this 5Y example of not covering the depth of safeguard analysis that you have to do with root cause analysis.
Or maybe the sequence of events even. Maybe they didn't get the whole sequence of events looked at. They just looked at this first step in the sequence where the guy didn't mark it with an indelible marker and he was never trained. And that's an answer. There we go.
Okay,
the new guy, it's his fault.
So that's not the best 5Y example either.
Well,
we need to move to number 3 on our list.
I hope we can do better. We can
number
do better than this.
Number 3 will be better. We know
All right.
it. Administrative example from a website explaining how to use 5Ys. This is going to be good.
This came from a website that's explaining how to use 5Ys.
So we know it'll be good. This is employees did not receive pay stubs on payday. That's the issue that we're going to 5Y.
This is a pretty simple one, right? They didn't get their pay stubs. This is a good 5Y example.
I hope the answer is fire HR. That's right. That's the.
Come on.
All right, let's find out. So why did the employees not receive their pay stubs on payday?
Because the printing system failed the day before payday.
Why did the printing system fail the day before payday?
Because the system could not recover from a hardware fault.
So why could the system not recover from a hardware fault?
Because the system uses outdated hardware that has no automatic redundant backup.
Why do they use an outdated system?
Oh, that's easy. Because the system hasn't been replaced as it hasn't been identified as a high enough priority to allocate budget to its replacement in the current economic climate. Boy, that's a long one.
That's a tough one to go. It's just why is there a current economic
the
climate? Why hasn't it been replaced?
Well, because the organization doesn't have the enterprise planning methodology that weighs the risks of current operational system failings versus the criticality of these systems and the impact of such a failure.
So our root cause is
Whoa.
the organization does not have an enterprise planning methodology that weighs the risks of current operational system failing versus the criticality of these systems and the impact on such failure. Is that a root cause?
It's a long one if it is one. I gotta have feeling that somebody wanted the organization to adopt an enterprise planning methodology that weighed the risk of operational systems failing and the criticality of these systems. Somebody wanted to do that, and they came up with this incident as a good reason to do that.
Yeah. So, I also see on here you've got Y4 and Y5. You have Y4 being why did we use an outdated system? Because the system hasn't been replaced as identified. Why? Because the organization didn't have a plan to replace it.
It sounds like that was a corrective action they wanted to implement, and so they put that as number 5.
They almost probably went backwards. This is what I want to do, and we're just going to fit these in.
Yes.
And I got to fit it into 5.
So I have met people who said, well, what this is really for is just so you can show your thinking of why you got to this answer. And sometimes you can work it backwards where I got this answer, and I can work it backwards to this is the problem.
I know I saw several times with people doing 5 whys that they knew the problem and then they had to report it out. And so they were just fitting it in with their...
Because we have to have 5.
Got to have 5. Or you got to have 3 and they just went 2 and they knew the answer. Like, oh, crap, I got to fill these in a little bit.
I got to get some more Ys.
Get some more Ys.
Well, do you have to have 5 every time?
Oh, well, that's what people say. Oh, you don't have to have 5. You could have 50. You could have 10. You could have as complex as it is, you could have multiple trains of Y.
Well, if you had 50 Ys, you think that's an easy system?
It sounds like it gets more complicated every Y.
All right. So this one, I don't know. I don't think this was a good 5Y example. I hate to say it. I think somebody came up with an answer and made it fit.
Okay. So number 3 wasn't. Well, we've got 4. And this one, we know this one's good because this is according to ASQ quality progress. This is a good 5Y.
Oh, I remember this one. Yes, I do. I got in a lot of trouble for critiquing this one.
So this one we know is good. This is the Jefferson monument is deteriorating faster. So the problem is that we have the monument.
This was an example that was in ASQ magazine of a good 5Ys.
Good 5Ys, and so the
Sort
problem...
of like the definition of a good 5Ys.
And it's an important problem. There's a monument in our capital that's deteriorating.
Was it Washington Monument?
Jefferson.
No, Jefferson's Monument. Jefferson Monument. It's going to fall down, so we got to do something.
So why is the memorial deteriorating faster?
Well, that's easy because it gets washed more frequently.
Well, okay, why is it getting washed more frequently?
Well, because there's bird droppings all over the place. We can't have that. We need to wash them off.
Okay, why are there more bird droppings on this monument?
Well, that's easy because there's more birds being attracted to the monument.
Well, why are there more, let's see, in this case, why are there more birds being attracted to the monument?
Well, that's easy because these big fat spiders are all over the place, and these birds are coming to eat the big fat spiders.
Big fat spiders. Why are there more juicy, delicious spiders all over this monument?
In the evening hours. They're coming in the evening hours to eat the big fat spiders.
Well, why are there these juicy fat spiders all over this monument?
Well, that's because there's more of these tiny flying insects around the monument during the evening hours.
Oh, okay. Well, why are there more insects in the evening hours?
Well, because they turn the lights on, and the illumination attracts more insects.
Oh, so it's all because we lit up the Jefferson Monument. But I'm noticing something, and if I count these out, why did it deteriorate?
1,
why was it washed?
2,
why are there more birds?
3.
Why are there so many spiders?
4.
Why are there so many flying insects?
5.
Why is it? So we've got the lights
6.
there. So we're getting through all these different
6.
ones. There's
We got
6 on here.
6 Ys in this one.
Yeah, bird droppings.
That's because we had spiders and insects and birds and bird droppings.
We got all the way through the prey chain here. Insects to spiders to birds.
Sounds like
to
the
bird
apocalypse
droppings.
is coming on.
All because we just had some lights.
So they use this as the example, and I critiqued it was a bad example just as it was. But then about 6 months later, I found this other website that said, no, this isn't even the right thing. This isn't even, they said the Park Service did this 5-Whys. The Park Service didn't do 5-Whys. The Park Service hired a consultant. And the consultant took 6 months, and I can't remember, I'll just say $2 million to do a study. And their study, this was only one of the things. The bugs and the lights was one of the things. There were like 17 things they found. And the only thing they implemented was turning on the lights later. But then everybody started complaining about the lights coming on later because their photos didn't look so well. So the Park Service said, forget it, we're going to turn the lights on at the same time anyhow. But they did eventually figure out that the stuff they were using to wash it with was bad, and they switched what they were washing it with, and they went to a little, so they didn't have as caustic or whatever it was, a substance to wash it with, and they washed it less frequently. And this whole spider thing.
So it's not the big fat juicy spiders? It's not that?
It didn't turn out to be a big difference.
So
when they stopped turning the lights, yes, they did have less of these gnats, but they still had to wash the thing, and so it didn't make any difference.
So we've got another 5-Why here that's doing, it's got 6-Whys. It's so good.
Somebody
it's got
had
6.
an answer they liked.
And they thought was interesting.
They
right?
turn off the lights or turn on the lights later.
Yeah, so it's such an interesting story with this, and they fit it into, and they couldn't even fit it into 5.
They fit it into 6. So I guess they could have maybe if they
they'd
could
done
have said they could have
bugs.
said they could have said spiders and the birds are attracted because there's more spiders. They could have made that in one, maybe, you know.
Well, like birds were attracted because of bugs, and then just gone, why is there more bugs?
They skip the spiders.
Skip the spiders. We don't have to have these spiders. So I look at this one, and I can see one of the big problems is what you know and what you don't know, and what you investigate and what you don't investigate.
Well, this is a definite example of you only can find what you already know. And if the guy knew about the bugs, he found the bugs. But if you spend $2 million, you might find a whole plethora more things.
For $2 million, we should find a lot more than just the spiders.
Yeah, I think those spiders are the problem right there. Oh wait, it's the bugs.
That's an expensive $2 million light switch.
Yes.
To tell us to turn it off.
It is.
Okay, so ASQ didn't have the answer of the best 5-Why.
And
we go to LinkedIn. And I saw this posted yesterday.
Wow. So
it's
a very recent 5-Why.
The latest and hottest 5-Why example.
All right.
And I'll
from
say
LinkedIn must be good.
So the problem is a machine stopped on the packaging.
Oh, it's another machine stopped example.
Machine stopped example.
Okay.
So why did the machine stop? Because the motor overheated.
Is that the first why?
That's the first why, because the motor overheated.
Oh, overheated motor again. Oh, well, the other one's a locked up motor, but go ahead.
Why was the motor overheated? Because it wasn't lubricated.
Oh, another not lubricated motor.
Why was the motor not lubricated? Because the preventive maintenance wasn't performed.
Oh.
Why was the preventive maintenance not performed? Because the schedule was not followed.
Ah.
Why was the schedule not followed?
How many are we at now? How many
This
whys?
is 4. This is the 5th one. Why was the schedule not followed? Because the technician wasn't trained in PM procedures.
Well, wait a second. Was he not trained because nobody told them that they needed to be trained?
No, we don't know about who was told on the training or not.
Oh, all right.
This
that sounds
is
a lot like that medical one.
Look, the root cause is there was a lack of technician training.
That sounds like a combination between that medical one and the Taiichi Ohno one combined there.
It's about both of those. Implement a structured PM training program and audit compliance. That's
so
our
once
fix.
again, they had their answer and they worked it back 5-Whys.
Yeah.
That's what it sounds like to me.
Well, so I noticed that.
So wait a second. This was another lubrication stopped, right?
Yep.
So the question in my mind is, why wasn't there an alarm? How did they not know there was no lubrication?
So
I mean, your car, if your oil pressure falls, you have at least an idiot light that comes on, right?
Yeah, you got a go see say emergency or your check engine.
Yeah,
or,
all those things.
Or the no oil light.
Who knows?
So you get these, and I notice if we look at these corrective actions, we have a couple that are I would say on the stronger side, you've got turn off the lights. That's a decent.
Except it didn't make any difference.
This is a really good corrective act.
Okay.
You've got add a filter. Don't worry about the other problems of why you need a filter.
Yeah, but what if they didn't do the maintenance? See, then you've got another one here.
Well, so this one is training. We have at least one that's training here.
The medical one was training.
The medical one was training as well, and the other, I don't know, implement a system of that evaluates. This
was the long run. Because the organization did not have an enterprise planning methodology
for printers.
They couldn't say method; it had to be methodology that weighs the risk of current operational systems failing versus. Now, this is another one I thought of. Couldn't they email or text pay stubs to people?
This was probably the 90s. It had to have come from the 90s.
I mean, do you have to print out a pay stub? And is there only one printer in the organization? Couldn't they just print it to a different printer?
It's the special HR printer.
It's got the only one that can print a pay stub.
Got a really good thick pay stub.
Okay.
It's got to have the tear
I had a lot of questions about this one in my mind.
So all 5 of these best 5-why examples, is there such a thing as a good 5-why example?
Well, this is the best 5 I could. Well, I didn't have your fifth one there.
LinkedIn
I had a
one.
different 5th one, which was even worse. So I have never. Oh, this is going to sound horrible. I don't think I've ever seen a good 5-why example that I didn't go, either that's not a root cause, or you started out with the answer and all you did was make 5 whys to get there. So it never guided them past their current knowledge. In fact, very seldom do I see a good human performance fix. If you have got a human error, it almost always ends with training. Training. That's what it almost always ends with.
Yeah, it's always training. Someone should have told them to do training.
Well, or somebody should have told them to do training. So, personally, I've never seen a good 5-why example, even if Taiichi Ohno made the example. In fact, I did a whole, if you use Taproot compared to using Taiichi Ohno's method, what might you find if you reevaluated that one? And that was one that probably got the most comments of any of our blog articles of people who got mad at me afterwards because they said, well, you found things that he didn't find. And I thought, well, that's the point. That if you ask different questions, you find different things, and you might find a whole lot of stuff that you didn't ask questions about when you only ask 5 whys. And the other thing is that you really need the snap chart, the sequence of events, before you start asking why, or otherwise you won't identify all the causal factors that need to have root causes developed for them.
So I used to do a lot of coaching on 5 whys. We were doing 25 whys a day sometimes for just different little
5 times 25 whys.
It was a lot. It was a lot. And again, like I said, sometimes they only got to 3 whys, but most of the time, looking back, at the time I thought it was their problem of they just weren't asking deep enough questions. They weren't digging deep enough. That's the thought you have at the moment when you're doing.
They aren't digging as deep as you were thinking.
They weren't asking the right. But looking back on it, I think it really is often they don't know the questions to ask, and they're limited by their experience and what they know. I see a lot of organizations that would do 5 whys and they'd get really good results from Lean, mostly because they implemented a really good and-on system to identify when they had problems. So a lot of the
what system?
And-on. It's basically an alert that you would have when something wasn't meeting standard, wasn't meeting production goals.
So you were identifying incidents.
Yeah, they got really good at identifying incidents, and when you did that, you got resources there to get things operational.
So you fixed problems so the thing got back online.
Exactly.
Which in manufacturing seems like that's what we want to do.
Well, it is. It gets us back to making money, right? And so that's what you want to do is get back.
What about repeat incidents, though?
You'd have those and you'd report out on them. And if you recognized, because again, even if it was the same incident with 5-why, people would write it a little different. So it was hard to trend and recognize that you had repeats when it was really obvious you would, but you wouldn't notice it necessarily.
Because the one you could have, no one told them to have an induction process, and the other one you could just say it was training.
Yeah. And so, again, having it written by people just writing it out, you just missed opportunities like that to notice that you had a repeat problem, and it's made trending really difficult. You can't trend on your root cause. You only could trend kind of on some sort of classification system you had for what type of incident you were having. So I know I had a lot of maintenance problems, or I had a lot of missed schedule.
Did it ever end up one of these things?
Oh.
Where the maintenance guy said, no, that's operations, and the operations guy said, no, that's the maintenance people?
More often than you'd think. So you get these 5-why examples and you do all this coaching and you think it's the person not doing the technique right. But hindsight, what I realize is the technique itself was the limiting factor. 5-whys, it is simple, and that's great for it, but it's never going to get you beyond what you already know.
I went back a long time ago. I went to a refinery that was doing 5-whys, and I gave them a talk about why they should be using Taproot instead to their management and to their safety team. And they said, oh, we got done, like, let's say it was 11 o'clock, and I got done giving my talk, and they were like, okay, how would you like to go to lunch with us? I said, oh, that'd be great. Well, right after lunch, we're doing an incident review. When's your plane take off? And I said, well, I don't leave till like 4:30, 5 o'clock. And they said, oh, you got plenty of time then to come to our incident review. It was like 12:30. I said, would you like to do that? And I said, sure, I'd like to see what you do. So this was an example where they were going to work on a pump. There were 3 of these pumps out there. One was running, one was in standby, and one was shut down for maintenance. And they got the standby pump, which was lined up to go. So when they started undoing, I don't remember, it was flanges or some kind of connections, and this fluid started spraying out. And when it first started spraying out, it wasn't hot. But as the fluid sprayed out, it finally got hot. It got so hot it self-ignited. So they got flames shooting out of this flange. Well, the guys doing it knew that you got fired if you violated lockout tagout. So they got a big piece of plywood and got a lot of extensions on a ratchet and went in there and tried tightening the bolts so they could stop the fire without telling anybody and not tell anybody they got the wrong pump out there that wasn't locked out and tagged out. The other one was locked out and tagged out, but they didn't check it before they started. They just thought they knew the right one.
They thought they had locked out the right one?
They thought the one they were working on was the right one. It wasn't. The one guy got slight burns. The other guy was a trainee. The trainee quit before the investigation started. He said, I'm not working here. It's too dangerous. And so the trainee quit. The other guy was the experienced guy. And so I get thrown into, this is there in the room. And on the one side of the room, they all brought their lunch. They were coming in for their lunch for this. And the one side of the room was the operations guys. And on the other side of the room was the maintenance guys. And there was like this vast empty space between them.
Chasm.
The chasm between them, because they were going to blame each other. See, it was the operator's fault. They didn't come out with us and make sure we had the right pump. No, it was the maintainer's fault because they didn't do their own lockout tagout independently. If they would have said, hey, this one's not locked out. What's going on? So they're pointing fingers. So first thing I did, we didn't do 5-whys right off the bat. First thing we did was do a timeline, snap chart. And they laid out what happened, all the steps that happened. And when they did, they could see, I think there were 6 different things that had to go wrong to cause them to have this fire. And that's before they got the wrenches and tried to tighten it up. So 6 different chances to prevent this from happening, and they all failed. And so at that point, we took a break. And they were just so happy because, well, it wasn't just the maintenance guys. It wasn't just the operators. It was all these mistakes. And the maintenance, I guess he was a superintendent, came up to me at the break and goes, can I have that? And I said, what do you mean? He says, can I have that? You drew that process on the board there. I want to write that down and have it. And I said, why? He goes, well, I can show my guys why it's so important they do their steps. Because if they don't do their steps, then they're just counting on, I think there were 2 operator steps in there, catching a mistake. And so it's really important that they do their steps. And I want to show this to all my maintenance guys to impress on them how important it is for them to do. One of their things was lockout tagout, but there were several other things. And I said, well, it's your process. Sure, you can have it. And I don't know if they went any further, because I had to leave after that, and that was sort of like, okay, we fixed this one. We know if they'll do lockout tagout, this won't happen. And but I thought it was so amazing that, if you did 5 whys, you might have only picked one of those things, and then it still would have been, well, why did the maintenance guy not do lockout tagout, or why didn't the operator go to the job site with them?
It was going to be dependent on was it an operations person or a maintenance person that did their 5 whys.
And that's why they were all there to point fingers at each other.
Because if the maintenance person had done the 5 whys,
it's the operator 5
it would have been,
whys.
why did they do it? Because they worked on the wrong unit. Why did they work on the wrong unit? Because the operator didn't come with them to tell them the right unit to work on. And then if you had the operations guy do it, why did they get this fire? Well, they opened up the wrong unit. Why did they didn't do their own lockout tagout?
Yes.
So it creates that blame point based on your experience and what investigations you were doing.
And that was it was blame oriented for them. You get it to blame the other guys, then you're not at fault.
And either way, because even with us, you're going to identify 2 different causal factors, but that's not the stopping.
Yeah, but they had 6. There was 6 in there.
Yeah. So for us, it's like that's not even the stopping point of an investigation. They were happy to stop right there.
They found out that they didn't do lockout tagout,
and they're going to do more training and discipline, and there we go.
The guy was going to show it to everybody to show them that they needed to do lockout tagout.
Perfect training.
On the job there by the superintendent.
But if we took that further, if we went through the taproot, you're going to see things that are going to be related to human factors.
Maybe.
Potentially, again, when you think of like
communications,
units,
maybe procedures, maybe training, could be training,
could be scheduling related,
could be management system causes, could be work direction causes. There's lots of potential causes that weren't looked into.
Yeah, and they were wowed just by the surface level identification of causal factors.
I find that's true for a lot of people. Mm-hmm. When you just lay out what happened, it's like, holy cow, I never knew this.
Yeah. So I think we've seen there's a lot of weaknesses with 5 whys, even the best 5 whys.
Well, this is the best 5 whys, and we didn't find any that we were really happy with.
Yeah. So if we want to be happier with our investigations,
5 whys from
the best, from the person who made it,
Taiichi Ohno, the creator of 5 whys. 5 whys from a medical example. Those doctors surely must know what they're doing. 5 whys
from ASQ.
5 whys from
different internet consultants.
ASQ and it was not Lincoln. It was the Jefferson Memorial. Jefferson Memorial. I mean, it's got to be right?
Yep.
And anyhow, there's a lot of examples there.
So if you're unsatisfied with what your
5 whys from
LinkedIn, the answer to everything. So if you're unsatisfied with your incident investigations and you want to go beyond 5 whys, best place to do that would be one of our upcoming Taproot courses.
I'd say so.
We do 5 days for advanced training, and we do 2 days. And even with 2 days of training,
with a 2-day, you're way far ahead of a 5-why.
You'll be much further than any 5-why example that I've seen.
But if you're doing, first off, I don't think anybody would use 5 whys for a major investigation. You have
it's so bold of you to say that.
I don't think
when we've seen it.
Okay, so maybe you would, but I would think it's just like I don't want to say it's a no-brainer because they must have brains, but I don't think anybody should do a 5 whys for a major investigation. That just doesn't seem right. And I think if you're going to do any major investigations, you ought to go to the 5-day course. If you're just going to do simple investigations and maybe some slightly more complex ones, then probably a 2-day course will work out for you. But if you want to go to major investigations, you're probably going to eventually want to go to a 5-day anyhow, so why not start off with that?
So, learning more, go to one of our public courses. You can find more on our website, www.taproot.com. You can look at our courses. You can look at our store to see what public courses are near you. So we'll see you guys there and see you at another Taproot podcast.